Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello everyone. Today we will be starting with the lecture 4, which is on quantitative research designs. So this is the part 1 of the quantitative research designs, and during this lecture we will be covering the experimental research designs in depth. I am Dr. Harmeet Kaur Kang from Chitkara University, Punjab. What are the learning outcomes of this lecture? So after the class, you will be able to understand the various aspects of quantitative research designs and different types of the experimental research designs. And in the end, we will be talking about strengths and weaknesses of all the types of the experimental designs. So first of all, what is meant by the quantitative research designs? Research design is the most important methodological decision because everything, your evidence, your quality, your validity of the research depends upon the methods you use. So it is the most important point in your process of the research study where you should specifically take care. A great deal of care and thought should go into these decisions. So you should be very careful whenever you are designing your study. Now there are different aspects of the quantitative research designs. Whenever you are designing your quantitative research study, you have to understand that what all points you have to keep in mind. So we will be discussing all these aspects one by one. So the overall plan for addressing a research problem encompasses multiple issues, all of which have implications for the quality of evidence. So whatever plan you are making for your research study, it is having multiple issues, and all those issues will result in the quality of the evidence. So we should be talking about this in depth. So first one is intervention. So whenever you are designing your research study, you have to first of all see whether you are going to introduce any intervention in your study or not. So basically the quantitative research designs are of two types: experimental and non-experimental research designs. So in the experimental research studies, the researcher plays an active role. How the researcher plays an active role? Because the researcher introduces an intervention. He manipulates the independent variable where he makes some change in the independent variable, or you can say something new is introduced. That is known as intervention. Whereas in the non-experimental studies, the researcher observes the phenomena as they naturally occur. Okay, so whatever naturally is happening, that only is studied in the non-experimental research studies, and there is no intervention. So here the researcher plays a passive role, whereas in experimental studies the researcher plays an active role. Next one is comparisons. Then you have to see whether your research study includes the comparison. Are you going to compare the groups? Are you going to compare some interventions? So let us discuss the different types of the comparisons which we have to think when we are designing our research study. First one is comparison between two or more groups. So you have to see, are you going to compare between two or more groups? For example, you may compare the lifestyle of the coronary artery disease patients, and you may compare the two groups, maybe rural and urban. Or you are studying the emotional status of the women who have undergone abortion. So you may take two groups. One group might be having who have undergone the spontaneous abortion, and second group can be the women who themselves have taken the decision to undergo the abortion. So then you can compare these two groups. Second one is comparison of one group's status at two or more points in time. So it means only one group you are studying, but then you are studying the group at different points of time. For example, in experimental study, you can do a baseline assessment, then you provide an intervention, and after the intervention again you assess the patients. That is where you can compare the status of the group at two or more points in time. Same way, for example, you want to study the status of the patient or stress level of the patient after CABG. Just after CABG, post-operative day 1, and then you can check on post-operative day 3, then at discharge, then maybe at 1 month. So here, the same group status you are studying at different points of time. Third one is comparison of one group status under different circumstances. So here, the same group's status can be studied under the different circumstances. For example, you may assess the blood pressure of a group of elderly people while they are doing different types of the exercises. Maybe you can check that when they are doing the yoga, what is the blood pressure, or when they are doing the aerobic exercises, what is the blood pressure. So under the different circumstances, you are studying the blood pressure. Then comparison based upon relative ranking. So here you can compare the groups based upon some ranking, maybe higher or lower. For example, if you want to study the level of stress and how is it affected with the level of loneliness. So you may take two groups, the people, the elderlies who are staying with the family, or who are not staying with the family, so empty nest elderlies. So then you can compare that the persons whose loneliness level is high, whether their stress level is high or low. So you can compare based upon the relative ranking. So you will get from the same group you will get some few people who will be having higher level of loneliness, then we get to know what is their stress level, and some people who are having lower level of loneliness and what is their stress. So you can compare based upon the relative rankings. Next type of comparison is comparison with other studies. So here maybe you are doing a study on blood pressure, and the previous studies have given some standard baseline for the blood pressure for diabetics or for hypertension. So you are having some standard criterion value, and then you can compare your results with some criterion value which is already available to you through the previous studies. So that is done through statistical procedures. So this is also a type of comparison. So whenever you are deciding about your research design, you have to see that what type of comparison are you going to make. Next aspect of quantitative research design, which is very important, is control for extraneous variables. Now, what are the extraneous variables? Extraneous variables are all other variables, means other than the variables which we are studying. All other factors which might be affecting the dependent variable, which might affect the results of your study. So you need to take care that you should identify all those extraneous variables, and you should control so that you can really get to know that whatever results you are getting, those are because of the change in the independent variable, not because of anything else. So an important feature of the research design of quantitative studies is the steps that will be taken to control the extraneous variables, as I have already told you. Second one is that complexity of relationship among human characteristics often makes it difficult to answer research questions unambiguously. So, because there are a number of human characteristics which might be affecting your research variable, your research concept. So, there is always a confusion unless efforts are made to isolate the key research variables and to control other factors extraneous to the research question. So we need to understand that what are our research variable and what are the other factors which are extraneous, which are external to the research question but which might affect your results of your research variables. So you should always identify, particularly when you are doing an experimental study where you are introducing an intervention and you are trying to find out the effect of that intervention on the dependent variable. You have to be very sure that what are your extraneous variables and how you are controlling those extraneous variables. Okay, next aspect is timing of data collection. You have to decide whether you will be collecting the data at a single point in time or you will be collecting at multiple point in time. For example, if you are giving an intervention, are you going to assess the patients before the intervention and after the intervention also? Or even if you are doing pre-test, post-test, are you going to assess the patients at different points of time? Maybe weekly or monthly or maybe day wise, maybe first day, second day, third day. So you have to decide what will be the timings of the data collection. Depending upon your research question, you should try to decide it thoroughly beforehand. You should understand that what is the need of your research study, and based upon that you can decide the timings of the data collection. Another aspect is research site and settings. So you should decide that what will be the site and setting for your study. What should be the best setting which you should be using, so that the settings should not act as the extraneous variables. For example, if patients are in the clinical area, or you might have heard the white coat effect, that might result in certain biophysiological changes. So that might be affecting the measurements which you will be taking in the hospital or in the OPD, where it is very crowdy, so patients' blood pressure may shoot up and patient may sometimes feel palpitation. So you have to decide beforehand at what will be the setting, so that your findings should not be affected because of the settings. So site and settings should be selected so as to maximize the validity and reliability of the data. So this is very important. So whatever results you are getting, those should be valid and those should be consistent. So site and setting should be always taken care. So in designing a study, it may be important to consider whether participants are influenced by being in settings. Like just now I have told you the white coat effect or anxiety provoking effects. So that may be anxiety provoking or foreign to their usual experiences. So if you want to study their behavior in the natural settings, or what are their practices or whatever you are observing, then you have to see whether you are going to call them in a different setting to get the data, or it will be better to observe them in their own area where your result findings will be more valid. Next important aspect is communication with the subjects. While designing your study, you should decide that how much information you will be providing to your participants. So you should decide beforehand. Full disclosure to subjects before obtaining their consent is ethically correct. So ethically, whenever we are collecting the data from the human subjects, we should take their consent. But then we need to decide that if we will be providing the full information, there should not be change in their behavior which may affect the results of our study. So we need to decide based upon that it should not be affecting the validity of our findings. So depending upon that, we need to decide that how much information we have to give to our participants. The researcher should also consider the costs and benefits of alternative means of communicating information to the study participants. And you should also decide that what will be the cost and what will be the benefits if you are using some alternative means of communication of the information. Will you be providing face-to-face information, or you will be providing written information, or through some other platforms you will be providing the information, and what are the benefits of those alternative means? That should also be decided beforehand. Okay, now as we have discussed about all the aspects while we should be deciding the research designs, and once you have decided, then you will be thinking that whether I have to go for the experimental study or non-experimental study. So today we will be talking about the experimental research designs. But before going into the experimental research designs, let us see what are the different types of the quantitative research designs. So if we see the research design types, we have two types: experimental research designs and non-experimental research designs. Experimental research designs are those designs where some intervention is introduced by the researcher. Whereas non-experimental research designs, these research studies are conducted in the natural settings where the researcher does not intervene. So let us talk about the experimental research design. So as I have already told you that in an experiment, researchers are active agents. They are not passive observers, because here they are introducing some interventions. They are making some change in the independent variable. How this experimental research design evolved, it is reported that early physical scientists, they learned that it is very difficult to understand important relationships in the natural setting. So what they started to do, they started to isolate those phenomena in the laboratory and the control conditions. So which you have seen that in the laboratories we conduct the experiments, like for example, how the viruses multiply in different circumstances, what is the effect of the medicine. So everything they started studying in the laboratory settings. And the procedures developed by the physical scientists were profitably adopted by the biologists during the 19th century in the field of physiology and medicine. So physiology and medicine, they took up the laboratory sciences and they started experimenting in the laboratory. Whereas in 20th century, these experimental methods started to be used by the researchers to study the human behavior. So human behavior also can be studied through the experimental research, where the researcher can introduce some intervention and they can study that how the human behavior changes. So this is the history of the experimental research designs. Now let us talk about the characteristics of the true experimental designs. First and foremost is manipulation. What is manipulation? Manipulation is introduction of intervention. So the experimenter does something to at least some subjects. So maybe we might be having two groups. So one group we can give intervention and another group may get the usual treatment. So experimenter or the researcher is having an active role and he introduces the intervention. That is known as manipulation. Second important characteristic is control. So the experimenter introduces control over the experimental situation, including the use of control group. So like earlier I talked about the extraneous variables. So we try to isolate the research variables from the extraneous variables, and researcher takes care that all the extraneous variables which may have effect on the dependent variable should be controlled, and plus a researcher may also use a control group to find out the exact effect of the intervention. Third important characteristics of the true experimental design is randomization. Randomization means experimenter assigns subjects to control or experimental group on random basis. So here the assignment of the subjects of your sample to the intervention or to the control group is decided on random basis, so that the researcher should not be biased to select the subject either in the experimental group or the control group. So in a way, randomization also helps in controlling the extraneous variable. Otherwise, the bias can also result in the decrease in the validity of the research finding. So these are the three important characteristics of the true experimental designs. This is manipulation, control, and randomization. Now let us talk about the classification of the experimental designs. Now experimental designs are classified into basic experimental designs, quasi-experimental designs, and true experimental designs. So basic experimental design is a very basic type of the design, and quasi is particularly a design where out of three we use the manipulation, but we may not use randomization or control. So we are having the two characteristics of the experimental designs. True experimental design is having all the three characteristics, where the researcher manipulates, researcher uses the control, and randomization is also used. So these are the different types of the research designs which we will be talking about one by one. So let us talk about the basic experimental design first of all. The basic experimental design is the simplest type of the experimental design, and this is also known as after only design or the post test only design, because here data on the dependent variable are collected only once. So here the researcher just provides the intervention, and after the intervention the data is collected. So here the data is not collected before the intervention, because the data is collected after the intervention, so that is why its name is after only or post test only design. So you can see this is the experimental group where the intervention is provided and the data is collected. The example is the post test only design to study the effect of an educational intervention relating to the urinary incontinence on subsequent help seeking behavior of the older adults. So here the researcher has introduced the educational intervention which is related to the urinary incontinence, and just after the educational intervention only the data is collected regarding the help seeking behavior of the older adults. So this is a type of after only design where the researcher has collected the data only after the intervention. Now let us talk about the true experimental designs. So I hope you are remembering that true experimental designs are having all the three characteristics, where researcher use the manipulation, uses the control, and randomization. So the first true experimental design which we will be studying is the pre-test post-test design. So name only says that here we collect the data both before and after the intervention. So the data is collected before the intervention and after the intervention. And this particular design is appropriate for measuring the change. So when we need to find out that what is the change from the baseline, because before the intervention we check the baseline measurement and then we provide the intervention, then after the intervention again we assess. So the change from the baseline can be assessed through this type of design. So you can see here this is the experimental group where through randomization the subjects are assigned to the experimental group, and observation 1 is the baseline assessment, then intervention is provided, and then observation 2 is the post-test assessment. Then for the control group, again the randomization, through the randomization the subjects are allocated to the control group, and then the first observation is done, which is baseline. Then there will be no new intervention. Maybe the patient might be using the usual treatment or usual care, and then the observation 2 is done, that is also known as the post-test assessment. So here why we are calling post-test, because the control group will be getting some type of usual treatment, and after the usual treatment again you will be assessing the you will be measuring the dependent variable. So you can find out the change from the baseline and the change which has happened after the intervention. Plus you can also find out the change or the difference between the experimental and control group. So here you will be clearly able to find out that what is the effect of intervention on the dependent variable. So let us see one example of pre-test post-test design. So the subjects were the patients with breast cancer, and your intervention here is cognitive behavioral telephone therapy. And here the women in the study were randomly assigned to the intervention or to the control group, and measures of the dependent variable which they have used are psychological distress. So they found the psychological distress of the patient, scoping and quality of life, and were measured at the baseline and at follow-up, and changes over time were determined. So they provided the intervention, cognitive behavioral telephone therapy intervention, to the patient with the breast cancer, and then they assessed before and after. The next important research design is Solomon 4 group design. So here the name only says that here we are having the 4 groups, 2 experimental and 2 control groups. Now this particular design is used whenever we have any question in our mind that the post-test results which we are getting might not be only because of the intervention, but these might be because of the pre-test also. Because if the subjects are exposed to the pre-test, then that exposure might be affecting their dependent variable, that is the post-test. So then we can go for the Solomon 4 group designs. So in the Solomon 4 group design, the data collection before and after the intervention for experimental, and 1 control group, but after only for a second experimental and control group to assess the pre-test effect. So it means we are having 2 experimental groups. So for 1 experimental group we will be doing a pre-test, post-test both, but for the other we will be doing only post-test. Same way for the control group, for 1 we will be doing pre-test, post-test, and for the another only post-test. So you can see it with the help of this table. Like experimental group 1, we have taken pre-test, post-test both in the experimental group 1, whereas for the experimental 2 we have not taken pre-test but only post-test. And for the control group 1, pre-test has been taken as well as post-test, whereas control group 2, no pre-test but post-test. So you can see that through this design we can find out the exact effect of the intervention on the post-test, or exact effect of the intervention on the change in the independent variable. And we will also get to know that whether in the second group, experimental group or control group, was there any change because of the pretest also, where we have not used the pretest. When we will be comparing these groups, then we will get to know that what is the exact effect of intervention and what is the effect of pretest. So the post-test measure of the dependent variable may be affected not only by the treatment but also by the exposure to pretest, as I have already told you. Therefore, Solomon 4 group design is the best design to segregate the effect of pretest on post-test For example, if I give you one example that you want to find out the nurse's attitude towards the HIV positive patients. So if you take the pretest, uh, we can think, or it can come in our mind, that the exposure to pretest can change their attitude, because in pretest there might be some questions on the attitude, so that may result in some change in the post test. So that is why there in this type of the study we can go for the Solomon 4 group, where for one group of the experimental nurses, one group of the nurses, we can take the pre-test and then the intervention to improve the attitude and then the post-test, right? And the another one, we should not take the pre-test and then the post-test. So with this we will get to know whether the intervention only was having the effect on the post-test, or pre-test also had any effect on the post-test. Next important design is the factorial design. Factorial design helps us to manipulate more than one independent variable, where we can find out, or we can test the main effect of the independent variables plus the interaction effects also. So how we can do, I'll give you one example. For example, we are comparing the two therapeutic strategies for premature infants, and the therapeutic strategies which we are using are tactile stimulation and auditory stimulation. At the same time, we are interested in learning if the daily amount of stimulation, that is, if we are giving the stimulation for 15 minutes, 30 minutes or 45 minutes, what is the effect? So we are able to get the effect of these independent variables, which are tactile stimulation and auditory stimulation. At the same time, the interaction effects, means the amount of exposure, amount of stimulation for 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45, that also we will be able to find out. So the dependent variables here are weight gain and cardiac responsiveness of the infant. So in the table form you can see here, these are the types of the stimulations or types of the intervention where we have used auditory stimulation and tactile stimulation. So this is A1 and A2, and these are the interactive effects where we are writing the daily exposure time, whether we are giving it for 15 minutes, 30 minutes or 45 minutes. So we will be having different groups. One group will be getting the auditory stimulation for 15 minutes. Another group will be getting the auditory stimulation for 30 minutes. Third group will be getting the auditory stimulation for 45 minutes. Tactile group will be getting this tactile stimulation for 15 minutes. Another group will be getting the tactile stimulation for 30 minutes and tactile stimulation for 45 minutes. So here you are having 6 groups. So depending upon the interaction, the main effects of these stimulations can be assessed. In this example, we were able to answer the 3 questions. First one is that, does auditory stimulation have more beneficial effect on the development of premature infants than tactile stimulation? So this, here in this question, we are trying to find out the main effect of the interventions, that whether tactile stimulation is better or auditory stimulation is better. Second question which we are trying to answer is the duration of stimulation related to infant development? So whether the amount or duration of stimulation is also having any effect. So the third one is auditory stimulation most effective when linked to a certain dose, and tactile stimulation most effective when coupled with a different dose? Here we are also trying to find out that if it is linked to certain dose, which one is more effective with a different dose. So we will get to know that these 3 questions can be answered through the factorial design. So factorial design is very good design where you have more than one intervention, and plus you want to also find out the interaction effects. Only thing is that for the factorial designs, as we will be having the more number of groups, like in this example we were having 6 groups, So in each group you have to have a certain number of the subjects. So you need to have a bigger sample size. That becomes sometimes difficult because particularly if you are having the subjects which you are able to get with the difficulty, it is sometimes difficult to get the desired sample size for such type of the design. But if you have good number of subjects available, then it is better to go for this type of the design. So what are the strengths of factorial design? So here, as I have already told you, that this type of the design permit us to evaluate not only the main effects but also the interaction effect. Next one is randomized block design. Now randomized block design looks like a factorial design, but it is little different, because in the factorial design we were manipulating both the interaction and the independent variable also, we were having two. But in randomized block design, here again we are having two factors, but one factor is not experimentally manipulated. So we do not manipulate one factor, only one factor is manipulated, the other factor is not manipulated. For example, if we are interested in comparing the effects of tactile versus auditory stimulation for male versus female infants. Now here again we are having two interventions, tactile and auditory stimulation, but our another variables which we are finding are male and female. And this male and female, this variable is the variable which we are not manipulating. So this variable will be acting as a blocking variable. That is why this design is known as randomized block design. So the variable gender, which cannot be manipulated, is known as blocking variable. So you can see in this table that these are the two types of the stimulation, auditory stimulation and tactile stimulation, and this particular variable is the gender variable, which we are not manipulating, but we can try to find out the effect of the stimulation based upon the gender. The inclusion of the blocking variable in a study design enhances the researcher's control over the sample comparison. So if we are including the blocking variable, we will try to get the sufficient number of subjects with specific characteristics. So we will be like, for example, in this particular example which I have given, we will be trying to take good number of the male infants as well as the female infants, and then we will be trying to find out the effect of the intervention based upon the gender too. This is if we consider gender a confounding variable, because we believe that male and female infants will respond differently to the two therapies, then a randomized block design is needed. So yes, if you feel that any variable, any characteristics of the subjects can be acting as a confounding variable, it is better to take that variable as a blocking variable, because then you will be able to find out the effect of the intervention based upon that particular blocking variable, and then we can really control the confounding variable. Or if we are not able to control, then at least we will be able to find out that what is the difference resulting because of that particular variable. Further interaction effect can also be examined. Next, the most important, or you can say that the best type of the true experimental design is the crossover design. Crossover design is also known as repeated measure design, and it involves the exposure of the same subjects to more than one experimental treatment. Now here we are having same subjects. In the earlier examples we were having two groups. Now whenever we are comparing the two groups, these two groups might not be homogeneous. The two groups might be different from each other. So those differences might result in decrease in the validity of your results, because if we are comparing, then the question can come that the effect may be because of the difference in the characteristics of the groups rather than the intervention. Counter that particular problem, this particular crossover design or repeated measure design is very good, because here we are taking one group. So the same subjects are exposed to more than one experimental treatment. Now here, because only the same group is there, the same subjects will be exposed. So here the subjects can be compared based upon the exposure, because they are the same subjects. There is no question of the heterogeneity of the characteristics of the subjects. So this type of within subject design has the advantage of ensuring the highest possible equivalence among subjects exposed to different conditions. As I have told you, that subjects are equivalent because the same subjects we are using. As the groups being compared are equal with respect to age, weight, health, and so on, because they are composed of the same people. Because here same people we are studying for the different experimental interventions. So this is a very good type of the design, because here the extraneous variables or characteristics of the subjects will not be acting as the extraneous variables, and it will not be putting a question on the validity of your research findings. So let us see crossover design, how it is designed. In this, subjects are randomly assigned to different ordering of the treatment. So here the subjects, which, for example, if you have taken 100 subjects, you will be randomly assigning them to different ordering of the treatment. That randomly maybe 50 subjects will be getting one intervention first and second intervention second. For example, if a crossover design were used to compare the effect of auditory and tactile stimulation on infant development, some infants could be randomly assigned to receive auditory stimulation first, and the other would be assigned to receive the tactile stimulation first. Now this is the type of the crossover design where we take the study participants and we randomize them to treatment A or treatment B, and then in between there is a washout period. This washout period helps in washing out the effect of the first treatment. So for this both the groups, this period will help in washing out the effect of the treatment A, and for this group the treatment B's effect will be washed out, and then that after the washout period the next treatment will be given, treatment B for the group 1 and treatment A for the group 2. Now here, because the same type of the groups or same persons are crossing over and getting the another treatment, so that is why this is known as the crossover design. Now, what are the advantages of crossover design? In such a study, the three conditions for an experimental have been met. So here we are having manipulation also, we are having randomization and a control group also. And control group is served with the subject serving as their own controls. So here the control group is the same subject. So that is why the more homogeneity of the characteristics of the groups are there. So it is really a good type of a design where the effect of the demographic variables will not have the effect on the dependent variable. Then is the disadvantages of the crossover design. This is the important disadvantage, that is the carryover effect. So when subjects are exposed to two different treatment or conditions, they may be influenced in the second condition by their experience in the first condition. So if to the one group you are giving treatment A first, so there if the effect of the treatment A may remain by the time you are giving the second treatment. So this is known as the carryover effect. So then usually we cannot say that the effect is because of the second intervention or because of the carryover effect of the first intervention. But we can, as I have shown you the washout period, so you can use the washout period and this carryover effect can be minimized. So if you are using washout period, within time the effect of the first intervention will be washed out. Example of the carryover effect is drug B administered after drug A is not necessarily the same treatment as drug B administered before drug A. So this is particularly when you are giving some drugs, this carryover effect may have really effect on the post test. But for that, then you have to decide about your washout period. Okay, now these were all different types of research designs. Depending upon your research question, you can decide about your research designs, whether you have to go for after only design or you will be going for true experimental designs, where we have talked about Solomon 4 group, randomized block design, factorial design, or crossover design. But whenever you are deciding for your experiments, you have to think of many aspects. So let us discuss about the experimental conditions which you have to decide when you are designing your study. And experimental conditions should be nicely jotted down. It should be nicely step by step guide should be there, that how the experimental experiments or interventions will be carried out in your study. So researchers need to carefully design an intervention that is appropriate to the problem and of sufficient intensity and duration that effects might reasonably be expected. So we have to design our intervention in a way that whatever intervention we are giving, it should be of good intensity, it should be of good duration, so that whatever effects we are expecting, those effects should be there after the intervention. The full nature of the intervention must be clearly delineated in the formal protocol. So we need to design the formal protocols where each and every step of intervention and nature of the intervention should be clearly spelled out. So we need to address certain questions in the intervention protocols. First one is that what is the intervention and how does it differs from the usual methods of care? Means you have to write exactly that what will be your intervention and what will be your what type of treatment will be given to the control group and how it will be differing from each other. Second one is, if there are two alternative interventions, how exactly do they differ? What is the difference between these two alternative interventions? Then what are the specific procedures to be used with those receiving the intervention? So what type of procedures, step by step, what type of procedures you will be using for the subjects who will be receiving the interventions? What will be the dosage or intensity of the intervention? So for example, if you are giving some turmeric mouthwash for the oral mucositis, what is the dosage and how much amount of turmeric mouthwash you will be using? Over how long a period will the intervention be administered? What will be the duration of the intervention and how frequently will it be administered and when will the treatment begin? You need to decide it beforehand. Will you be, if it is a post-surgical treatment, whether it will be started just after the surgery or on the first day of surgery, and for how long it will be given, and every day how frequently it will be given. So everything you have to decide beforehand, it should be written in the protocol clearly. Another important question is that who will administer the intervention, whether the researcher himself will be administering or the nurses who will be working in the area will be administering. If any other one is administering, what are their credentials and what type of special training will they receive? Because if intervention is given by more than one person, then all the persons should be trained to give that intervention in the same way. Then under what conditions will the intervention be withdrawn or altered? That also should be written clearly, that because of the intervention, if there will be any type of complication, then at what point of time the intervention will be withdrawn or it will be changed or altered. Okay, now coming to the control condition. As the experimental condition or intervention protocol is very important, in the same way control conditions should also be explained in the protocol clearly. So here the control group condition used as a basis of comparison in a study is referred to as a counterfactual. The counterfactual conditions are those which we are using in the control group. So researchers have choice about what to use as counterfactual. So we can decide that in the control group what we will be using, whether we will be giving the usual treatment or something else. So their decision is sometimes based upon theoretical or substantive grounds, but may also be driven by the practical or ethical concerns. So sometimes theoretically we know that this particular drug might be good, or this particular intervention might be good, and whatever usual treatment patients are getting, that also we can use. But sometimes we have to be thinking practically or ethically, because we particularly for nursing studies, our subjects are patients. So if to a patient, to experimental group, we are giving the drugs to treat something, but to the control group, if we are not giving anything, is it ethically right? Whether practically it will be allowed to you. If anyone is patient of any disease and he is not getting any treatment or any drug, is it ethically right, and is it practically possible? So your decision about the control conditions should be not only theoretical, but it should also be driven by practical and ethical concerns. So control condition is an alternative intervention. It can be a placebo or pseudo interventions also. Placebo is that the patient thinks that he is getting the same intervention, but it is not the same intervention. For example, if to one group you are giving a drug which is having an effect on a particular system, but the placebo may be the same type of the drug which may look like same, but it is not having the effect. Then standard methods of care can also be taken as a control condition. Different doses or intensity of treatment or delayed treatment can also be taken as a control condition. Okay. Now, as we have discussed about the experimental conditions also, control conditions also, we should also know that what are the strengths and limitations of experimental research designs. So, first of all, let us talk about the strengths. True experiments are the most powerful methods available for testing hypotheses of cause and effect relationship between variables. So, experimental design is only one design which helps us to test the hypothesis of cause and effect. That particular one independent variable is affecting the dependent variable. So this particular hypothesis we can test, and that can be tested only through the experimental research designs. Studies using an experimental design are in general thought to yield the highest quality evidence regarding the effects of specific interventions and nursing actions. So here we get the highest quality evidence, because we know that if specific interventions were given in a controlled condition, what were the effects. So that is why the studies which are particularly true experimental research designs, we take the evidence as the highest quality evidence. Experiments offer greater corroboration than any other research approach, that if the independent variable is manipulated in a specified way, then certain consequences in the dependent variable may be expected to ensue. So this is also telling us about the cause and effect relationship only. Now coming to the limitations of experimental designs. Many researchers, they criticize the experimental design for their artificiality, because here we are not allowing the phenomena to occur naturally, but we are manipulating them, we are creating them, or we are artificially creating. So that is why this is sometimes criticized, because maybe you are conducting the experiments and then you are finding out the effect, whether practically those experiments in the long term will be possible or not. Second one is, clinical experimental studies are usually conducted in the environments over which researchers have little control. And the control is a critical factor in experimental design. Particularly our studies we conduct in hospital. And in hospital we are usually not able to control many conditions. So there the extraneous variables may have effect on your dependent variables of the research study. So sometimes it is a critical factor that we are not able to control because of our little control over the environments in the clinical area. Next one is Hawthorne effect, which is a placebo effect. This is an important limitation of the experimental design because many a times patients, when they understand that they are part of the research study, the positive effects start coming. They may not be getting any intervention, but in the control group also there might be some positive effects. That is known as the Hawthorne effect. So this is a effect which may happen in the control group, and then we may say that there is no effect of the intervention, or control group and experimental group did not have any effect, but it might be because of the Hawthorne effect, where the patients or subjects feel that if they are part of the research, they start to show some positive effects. Experimental studies are usually difficult to design and implement, because when you are designing an experimental design, you have to think thoroughly what will be your research variables, what will be the extraneous variable, how you will be controlling, how you will be randomizing, how much sample size is needed. So it is usually difficult to design, and equally it is difficult to implement, because in the clinical environment particularly, or even in the villages or community environment, sometimes it is very difficult to implement the experimental design which you have planned. Okay, till now we have discussed about the true experimental designs. Now let us talk about the quasi-experimental designs. Now what are the quasi-experimental designs? These are like true experimental designs only, but it involves manipulation, that is the intervention. However, quasi-experimental design lacks the randomization to the treatment group, which characterizes the true experiments. Many a time quasi-experimental design may not have the randomization. So then it is known as the quasi-experimental. The important design which is used in the quasi-experimental design is pre-test post-test design, where we can collect the data before and after intervention, and it is also used to find out the change. But only difference from the true experimental design is that we are not randomly assigning the intervention to means subjects are not assigned to experimental and control group randomly, but whosoever is available, or purposefully whichever is available, we assign the patients into the experimental or control group. So here we are not using randomization. Another type of the design is time series design, which is also often used. This is a variant of pre-test post-test design only, but here the series of set of measurements are taken. Means here not only one observation before and one observation after is not taken, but there are number of observations which are done. You can see here that number of observations are used. Here we have shown only 2 observations, but more than 2 or 3 observations for a longer period of time can also be done before or after the intervention. Let us talk about the strengths of the quasi-experimental design. Quasi-experimental design introduces some research control when full experimental rigor is not possible. So we are able to conduct experiment, but maybe we are not able to take into account all the 3 characteristics of the true experimental design. Then quasi-experimental designs can be conducted. And a great strength of quasi-experiments is that they are practical. So it is practically possible, because sometimes it is not possible for us to randomize. So then quasi-experimental designs can be taken into consideration, and these are practically possible to conduct. Then what are the weaknesses of the quasi-experimental design? It is weak for establishment of the cause and effect relationship, because here the groups are not homogeneous. These might be non-equivalent group, and we are not doing randomization, so we cannot establish the cause and effect relationship. So with this, our quantitative research designs are over. So let us summarize. So today we have talked about quantitative research designs, where different types of the quantitative research designs are experimental and non-experimental research designs. And the 3 important characteristics of the true experimental designs are manipulation, randomization, and control. Then Then we discussed about different types of experimental designs, that is post-test only, pre-test, post-test design, Solomon group design, factorial design, randomized block design, and crossover design. And quasi-experimental designs we talked about where only manipulation, so there can be either no randomization or no control. And the types which we have discussed are non-equivalent pre-test, post-test design, and time series design. Experimental designs are best for the cause and effect relationship, and the important problem with the experimental design is Hawthorne effect, but it can be countered by the blinding. This is the bibliography. These are the books which I have used to prepare this lecture. One is Nursing Research Principles and Methods, and second one is Essentials of the Nursing Research, Appraising the Evidence for Nursing Practice. So with this, our lecture 5 is over. Now we will be meeting for our lecture 6, which will be the part 2 of the quantitative research designs, and we will be discussing about the non-experimental research designs. Thank you. Have a nice day.